From Global, leading Britain's conversation, The Nigel Farage Show.
Mr. Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Donald, and good evening, everybody, as the wonderful weather continues. But in politics, the turbulence, of course, is that back in 2016, we had the Brexit vote. We had Trump getting elected. We've now got a new populist government in Italy. And virtually the entire political establishment and most of the mainstream media are saying that these things are terrible mistakes. They are aberrations. They are short-term uprisings of anger from the general public that will not last, and that somehow soon normal service will be resumed. Well, I want to discuss with you tonight whether you think the populist revolt is a flash in the pan, or is it going to become the new normal? And if you think populism has had its day, Tony Blair is right. We're going to go back to normal liberal democracy. Call me on 0345 6060 973. Or if you think actually the issues that led to this populist revolt are still there, strong and deep-rooted, text to 84850. Or maybe you think actually populism, far from being and used all the time as a pejorative word, actually is a good thing, because it's people saying what they really think and expressing their distaste for their leaders, then tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC. And of course, you can watch us on Facebook and you can comment there too. And please try and keep it clean, because then I can actually read out your comments. Well, to help me with all of this is Professor Matthew Goodwin, and he's the joint author of a new book, National Populism, The Revolt Against Liberal Democracy. Matthew, good evening and welcome.
Good evening.
To LBC. This reads, The Revolt Against Liberal Democracy. Liberal democracy sounds in your title to be nice and fluffy and cuddly, and somehow populism is horrible. Tell us, what actually is, in your view, populism?
Well, I think one of the problems that we've got across the West is that we're failing to understand what populism is. We've become pretty obsessed with those short-term factors. If you think about the things like Brexit, you think about Trump, you think about populists in Europe, we've been told it's about the recession, it's about the refugee crisis, it's about what was written on the side of a bus. And one of the things that we are trying to do in this book, at least, is say to people, well, actually, firstly, populism is older than liberal democracy. It's been coming for centuries, for a long time. But also, it's rooted in some very, very deep currents that are reshaping the world around us, and those relate partly to liberal democracy itself. I mean, liberal democracy, I don't think of as always an unalloyed good. It's also at points not done a very good job of absorbing people's concerns over issues like immigration and other things like that. So populism's really responded in response to the spread of liberal democracy. It's picked up on things that people feel are not being represented, and it's picked up on things that people feel perhaps they feel intensely about, but which maybe the main parties are not taking seriously. And I think probably you'd recognise some of those grievances from your days in UKIP.
No, I do, Matthew. But it's, I mean, in a sense, this populist revolt that we're seeing across the West. I mean, Brexit was the first brick out of the wall. Others think it's not, and it's all going to be reversed. But the impression we get, if we listen to so many of the commentariats, so many of our politicians, is that Brexit happened because I put up a poster that was horrible, Boris put some numbers on the side of a bus, and that actually it all happened in the last 6 weeks of the Brexit referendum campaign. But you're arguing that actually some of the grievances, some of the concerns had gone back sort of 20 years, I think you said in the book.
Yeah, so if you look, for example, at how people felt concerned about the EU over the last 20, 30 years, and actually there was always a majority of people in Britain that felt that they wanted to leave the European Union, or they felt that the EU had too much power. And so we've obsessed about what happened between January 2016 and June 2016. But actually, a lot of those currents that led to Brexit really were a long time coming. And if you had a historian here, for example, Liberal, they'd probably say, well, actually, Brexit itself was probably rooted in actually Britishness and British identity, and in particular English identity, which was always in a way defined against what was across the Channel, and it was defined against concentrated power, and people were suspicious about things like the European project in the 50s and the 60s, and how that evolved over time. And so I would say, if I looked at your campaigns and UKIP's campaigns, or even Conservative Party campaigns as well, that they were picking up on that legacy too, that sort of tradition of scepticism toward the EU.
How does that explain the Welsh? Because I know that, polling shows a lot of people who voted Brexit identify as English first and British second, and we've almost been told by our leaders to be ashamed of being English. So I kind of get where populism is with the concept of Englishness, and yet Wales voted to leave the European Union. How does that work?
Yeah, well, I think Wales, in a way, is a really interesting case. I mean, one of the things that I remember from that referendum was just how strong support for Leave was in Merthyr Tydfil, which effectively was a home of the Industrial Revolution. Lots of strong Labour areas voting to leave the EU. And I think if you look at the economic story in Wales, it's always been pretty dire. There's not been much inward investment. People have felt completely left behind and left out. And I think that's what they share with a lot of those communities in Northern England and the coastal communities. And this, I think, is a really important point, in that our debate since the referendum has still focused mainly on what London and the South East want, and it's mainly focused essentially on what the middle class want, and it's focused on what economists want and what the City of London wants.
And big businesses.
Well, I think partly that debate has still glossed the fact that Brexit was mainly a pushback to that very narrative, that idea that London controls everything, from people that are outside, from the small towns, from rural communities, from coastal communities. And I think partly that's what our debate has missed. I mean, why, for example, after the referendum, did we not have a discussion about, well, which institutions should we move out of London to other areas of the country? Why do we spend so much on transport in the southeast but so little in the northeast? Why do the banks get so much? Why have we not talked about economic redistribution?
Really?
I mean, my frustration with the debate on all sides, left, right and so on, is that we've still not got to grips with what actually caused Brexit in the first place.
Well, my view is there were lots of frustrations, but I think the reason we got Brexit is because 2.5 million people voted who hadn't voted in the previous general election, and the primary reason that I can see was immigration. Matthew, my view is that immigration, in fact, is the driving force of populism that we're seeing right across the European continent. Yet the odd thing is, we've got Michael Gove saying that I wanted a different feel to the Vote Leave campaign, regretting talking about Turkey, regretting the emphasis on immigration. We've got Boris Johnson saying that the referendum result was about control, about being able to call the shots, rather than slashing the level of migration. It seems that almost all the people in the Tory party that supported Leave, the prominent ones, now think that immigration has gone away. It's not an issue in British politics. It is not going to come back to bite them or to bite the Labour Party. Are they right about that?
Well, we've had a lot of studies since the vote, and they've basically shown that most Leavers cared about two things. One was getting laws and control back from the EU, and the other was lowering immigration. And immigration was front and centre to that Leave vote. In fact, the British election study, it's like the gold standard for the nerds like me who look at elections and politics, found that when Leavers were asked in their own words to name the two top reasons, the two top were sovereignty and immigration. But crucially, they found that those two concerns were often wrapped together in people's minds, that when people thought sovereignty, they also thought borders and security and migration. I suppose a question probably as well to you, though, would be, well, there's a difference between sort of addressing those issues and also actively mobilising them and actively kind of amplifying those concerns. So do you feel during the campaign at times that you were addressing those concerns, or do you feel that you are actively mobilising and amplifying those concerns?
I think as far as the question of sovereignty and immigration, I tried for 10 years to make people think it was the same thing, and maybe I had some degree of success with that. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because the debate that's going on between Labour and Tory, and within Labour and within Tory, these words like sovereignty and immigration simply aren't being used at all. There seems to be as much hatred within the parties at the moment than there is sort of between the parties. Does Westminster, does the mainstream in Washington and in Rome, do they actually get, do they understand what happened over the course of the last couple of years? Do they get it yet?
I think some people get it. I think the issue that we've got, what we're witnessing in a lot of these debates, I would argue, and certainly we argue in the book, is that we're seeing a reboot of what was called elite theory. And that's a very perhaps boring way of saying that throughout the history of democracy, there's always been a tendency on the part of those within power to be skeptical or dismissive of public opinion and ordinary voters. And I think through the Trump and the Brexit vote and the calls to have a second referendum and so on, there's been an attempt by some to kind of just put voters out of that discussion, and perhaps mass participation isn't a good thing. Perhaps voters not voting is a good thing, and I think that's what we've seen. And I think also across, in terms of liberalism more generally, I think we've seen perhaps a reluctance among some to ask the really difficult questions. Why are so few working class people in politics today? Only 3% of MPs have a working class background. And also, why are some of these concerns over issues like migration not necessarily racism, right? What's the difference between the two? But I mean, so take that Breaking Point poster that you became aligned with. I mean, so looking back at that referendum campaign, would you, if it all happened again, would you do it again? Would you do that? Personally,
I've got absolutely no regrets about it at all. I mean, I think Mrs. Merkel's decision to say as many as can come, please come, showed that the European Union itself had completely lost touch, not just with British voters, but actually with voters across the whole European continent. I think perhaps if I look at all the mistakes the EU has made, that probably was the biggest one that they've done. Well, I wonder, UKIP, of course, I was the leader of it for a long time, but UKIP was the populist party in British politics. And given that the Labour Party clearly is not going to push for a clean Brexit at all, that Chequers now appears to be the position that most Conservative MPs are settled around, which means regulatory alignment with the European Union, no prospect of getting back control of our borders. Is this the moment for UKIP to surge again?
Well, I think if you look at the opinion polls, pre-Chequers, UKIP was averaging 3%. Post-Chequers are averaging 6%. We had some polls last week from YouGov showing that between 60 and 70% of Conservative voters say they would be open to a right-wing party that was unequivocally committed to Brexit. And that could be the Conservative Party, of course, or it could be UKIP 2.0. I think where UKIP is now is quite different from, say, when you were in charge, in that it's become quite harder. It's more interested in the Islam issue. It's more interested in the Tommy Robinson issue. I mean, do you think that UKIP has made a strategic error given the broader political context?
Look, a lot of people in this country are concerned about Islam. A lot of people in this country see Tommy Robinson as a working class hero. I don't particularly necessarily share the entirety of that. I think he was dealt with very, very harshly and perhaps unfairly. Look, Matthew, I don't know. But on the big picture in your book, National Populism, the Revolt Against Liberal Democracy, final question to you, and the really important one. When we look back in 20 years at this period, in your opinion, will the populist revolt of Brexit, Trump, Salvini, all the rest of these things, will we look back and see this as a short-term aberration, or is this, in your opinion, going to become the new normal?
So I think the interesting macro question there is are we at the end of a period of volatility? Do things like Brexit and Trump signal that we're passing into a new phase? Or do they actually signal that we're at the beginning? And I think if you look at the broader currents that are sweeping through the West, it's difficult to conclude anything other than we're going to see significant volatility and change in the coming years. If you just look at the fact that fewer voters today feel aligned to the mainstream parties, if you look at the fact that migration and demographic change in the West is just going to become more, not less important to voters. And if you look at the fact that our economic settlement in the West is, I would argue, increasingly going to make certain groups feel left behind relative to other groups in society, I think all of those will continue to create, a big pool, if you like, a pool of voters that are very unhappy with the status quo. The question is whether actually those voters are mobilised by something, whether, you look at what's happening in Europe today, there are successful populist movements in the big democracies like France and Italy, but in some of the others like Spain or Portugal or Ireland, there aren't any, right? So it's somewhat of a mixed picture. But I think that's the question. And will there be demand for these movements? I think there will be, particularly among the working class, the lower middle class. Will that demand be mobilised? We'll have to wait and see. I don't know.
No. And breaking news, Labour has said an investigation into MP Dame Margaret Hodge for allegedly shouting at Jeremy Corbyn over anti-Semitism has been dropped. Are the Labour Party spending too much time talking to themselves and not to the British public?
I look at the Labour Party and think, look at what they could have made of this week. Council cuts, Northamptonshire. Look at the big issues on the world stage that they could have made some really big political capital out of. And they've spent the last 2 weeks really just having this quite indulgent, selfish, childish, quite nasty debate within their own party about this issue of anti-Semitism. I think they'll come back and look at this summer as a real lost opportunity.
Thank you. Matthew Goodwin, thanks for joining me. Well, folks, you've heard Professor Goodwin. He's co-authored this book, National Populism, The Revolt Against Liberal Democracy, and his thesis is that actually the causes of Brexit, Trump, Salvini are deep-rooted, and that this may well continue, this revolution, for some time to come. Is he right? Is he wrong? Will Brexit prove to be a flash in the pan, or are we actually heading to a new populist normal? You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC, and it's now 7:19.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast every weekday morning from 7, only on LBC.
Mars, the chocolate giant, has withdrawn all its advertising from YouTube after one of its products was promoted alongside a drill rap video. SK manages to drill music artists.
What are you going to do next? You've taken down the videos, yet people are still dying. Why? Because no one's coming down to the community.
You would appear to
if
have
it's not the
gangs
music,
murdering each other.
why is there no bloodbaths at the tours? Why are the deaths only street-related? Because it's to do with gang violence.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
With The Times, be not just informed, but well informed.
I want Poppy to play cricket for England.
I want Sam to stop screaming.
I want Joe to live a little.
I want Naomi to live a lot.
I want Becky to invent a cure for the common cold.
Whatever the future holds for your children, Vitality Life Insurance want to make it happy, healthy and secure. So when you take out our Wellness Optimizer, you'll get up to 40% off your life insurance premiums.
I want the twins to keep on being happy.
I just want whatever the twins are on.
Just search Vitality Life Insurance. Additional product, minimum monthly premiums and conditions apply.
This is your captain speaking. I'd like to welcome you on board today's flight. As we're currently behind schedule, we're going to skip all the pre-flight checks and just proceed with takeoff. I've given the tyres a kick and I think we've got enough fuel to get there, and the oil warning light hasn't come on yet, so buckle up and enjoy the flight.
You wouldn't fly without the proper checks, so why drive without them? Highways England recommends you check your tyres, fuel and oil before every long journey. For more information on vehicle safety checks, search Think.
So, you've received a notice from HMRC inquiring into your tax affairs. Any investigation is likely to be disruptive to your business and costly, especially if you don't get the right help. At Barnes Rofe, we recommend that you seek advice straight away. Our specialist tax team will support you no matter what the issue is. For a free confidential chat, contact the tax experts at barnesrofe.com. Barnes Rofe, clever accountants for business.
We are here every day and every night of every year. From newborn to old age. We never panic. We take a pulse, agree a plan, make a cuppa. We're doing our rounds, making our visits. We are Michelle, Adam, Alfie, Frankie, Yvonne. And at 3:49 this morning, we were Maisie too. We are the NHS and we are recruiting now. Search nursing careers.
This is the final call for passengers Emily and Oliver travelling on flight FR114 to Mallorca.
Emily, it'll be fine. The flight is only 2 hours. Surely you won't miss a call in that time.
No. I knew it was a bad idea. I mean, who even enjoys a week in the sun? I say we jump back in the hatchback and have a camp out in the living room.
Don't let FOMOB get in the way of your summer holidays. eReceptionist can manage and divert your calls, meaning you never miss an important opportunity. So start your free 30-day trial now and fight the FOMOB with eReceptionist.co.uk. T's and C's apply. Free trial cancellation required to avoid charges.
Oh, it's great to see everyone, isn't it?
Yeah, you can't beat a good picnic.
Your local Co-op's latest summer deal is 3 for 2 on selected picnic food, including Scotch eggs, mixed olives and feta, coleslaw and many more.
When I said we'd all go out to eat, I meant it.
Varieties are stocked, cheapest item free.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC.
Well, Professor Goodwin is a publisher of a new book, The Revolt Against Liberal Democracy, National Populism, and that's the debate, folks. Populism versus liberal democracy. The new wave that started with Brexit against the old established rules-based order, which ultimately is going to win out. And I totally agree with Professor Goodwin. I think what you've seen will continue. We'll see it happen across country after country after country. And I really believe that Westminster, the intellectuals, the liberal elites just don't get it. They still are trying to brush under the carpet the issue of immigration. You know, just for example, 2.5 million more cars on our roads in the last 5 years. You haven't got to be Einstein to work out that if your population is rising between 300 and 500,000 every year, there are going to be more cars on the motorway. It doesn't need much to work out. That's increased pressure on social services. The concerns the British people have on this issue are not based on dislikes or hatreds on racism. They're based, I think, on plain common sense that we need to get a grip, we need to get control. So I don't see this issue going away any time soon. Let's see what you think. Let's see what Andre, a new caller to this show from East Sheen, thinks. Good evening, Andre.
Good evening. Not a new caller, but a new caller to you.
To me? OK, fine. Well, you're very welcome, Andre. Thank you.
Yeah. Nigel, what my concern is, right, I was growing up in Jersey, Channel Islands in maybe the 70s, and we had this great idea that it was going to be a great common market, and that lovely tunnel was going to join us from England to France. Mm-hmm. And so where's it all gone wrong? Well, the common market was France, England and Germany, yeah?
Well, it was a bit more than that, Andre. I mean, there were 9 of us at that moment in time, and then over the years it expanded, didn't it?
Yeah, it's expanded. So in other words, we lied to.
Well, Andre, what we were lied to about, and Edward Heath admitted this much later on in life, is we were told it was about trade, cooperation and being good neighbours, and in a post-war world, all getting on together, which, in a sense, was quite difficult to vote against, wasn't it, really? Because it sort of seemed to make sense. And then it turned into a political union with expansionist aims. So, yeah, I think we were lied to. But was that Brexit vote an older generation? You know, was that their payback for being lied to? And are we going to find in 5 or 10 years' time that actually a younger generation want us to go back into the European Union?
Yeah, but I was quite excited at that particular time in the factors that we were going to sort of have that union. But that union really turned out to be not such a good thing.
So Andre, I'm guessing that you voted Brexit, did you?
Sorry?
You voted Brexit in the referendum, did you?
Yeah, I want out, yeah.
And do you think that trend that we're seeing with the AfD in Germany and with Le Pen and others in France and with the Salvinis and the Five Stars in Italy, do you think that trend is going to continue?
I really don't really. Maybe I think it will do.
Well, let's see. Andre, thank you very much for your call. Now, one of the reasons, of course, that populism has succeeded is social media. I've said on this show several times that the thing that really put me onto a big stage was YouTube. There's no question in my mind about that. That's what did it. And Michael here on SMS makes a very good point. He says the fact that social media and the left are so frantically busy trying to suppress populist views indicates that it's in the ascendant. The question is, with the growing level of censorship, can it continue to grow? And Michael is raising a very interesting point there. You know, Facebook, for example, and, you know, I crossed swords with Zuckerberg in Brussels not long ago. Facebook says it's a platform for all ideas, and yet Facebook has now started to ban people who are saying things that they think are unpleasant, unfit, fake news, and, all right, one or two of these commentators that have been banned from using Facebook may be a little bit out there, but if it's a platform for all ideas, they surely are entitled to express those views. One of the big debates, I think, is going to be, you know, Is Facebook now effectively a publisher? Are we going to see new forms of social media emerging if banning and shadow banning continues? And I'm actually very worried about this. I'm worried about the levels of censorship we're now seeing on the internet. Stephen is a new caller from Riseworth in northwest London. Good evening, Stephen.
Good evening.
So populism, is this, as Tony Blair seems to indicate, a short-term sort of outburst of anger from the ill-educated and perhaps not that well-washed, or is it here to stay?
That must be me then. I mean, I have a problem there, to be honest, with the word populism anyway, because its nature suggests popular, which suggests that of the masses, the lower rung of the ladder, the torch-burning villages and all of that kind of thing. And of course, it negates the facts, what you suggested earlier when you were talking about things like the cars on the road, the damage that's doing. We can't, there's no such thing as a 5-minute drive anymore. It's an hour drive to do anything. They just negating all the damage that it's doing to the country, the planet, and et cetera, but they think that they are the elite in their thinking because they're left-wing.
But Stephen, you clearly don't understand. These are advocates of liberal democracy. These are the nice people.
Exactly. What makes me laugh is a lot of them are in the Green Party as well. And then look at the damage being done to our green belt's starting to go up. We're seeing problems with wildlife dying. There's nowhere for the water to run, so we have flooding because it's been concreted over by people with their 10 cars because they've got a lot of kids in their families, etc., etc., etc. And one could go on and on and on. But yeah, hey, so long as we're making money for the big businesses, that's the main thing. Yeah.
Stephen, is the populist revolt going to continue?
I think it will continue more predominantly in other countries, and they will inspire it to continue in this country. But alone, if it was just us on our own, it wouldn't continue because we haven't got the backbone, and we are getting shut down. Anyone who has that opinion gets shut down, and they dare not say it publicly.
It's not made easy. Stephen, thank you. Stephen thinks it'll continue across the rest of Europe, which may keep it continuing here on our own. He thinks it may be coming towards an end. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It is now 7:30 and time for the news with Thomas Watts.
Labour has dropped its investigation into MP Dame Margaret Hodge over the party's anti-Semitism row. She was accused of shouting at the leader Jeremy Corbyn and is said to have described him as anti-Semitic. Thousands left homeless by a powerful earthquake on the Indonesian tourist island of Lombok are sheltering in makeshift tents. Authorities say rescuers have not yet reached all devastated areas and expect the toll of 98 dead to rise. England cricketer Ben Stokes has gone on trial accused of engaging in sustained significant violence in an alleged fight outside a nightclub. The 27-year-old, along with 2 others, denies a charge of a fray. LBC weather, dry for many tonight, some rain in Northern Ireland, northwest England and North Wales. Then tomorrow, cloudy with rain in northern and western parts of the UK and dry, warm and sunny elsewhere. A high of 34 degrees.
LBC travel, there are long delays on the eastbound M26 after a crash earlier this evening at junction 2A for Rootham Heath. All the lanes have now reopened, but the queues are still stretching for 4 miles. Coming towards town on the M4, it's slow from junction 3 for Heston to the start of the elevated section in Brentford after an accident earlier. And because of faulty trains, London Overground has severe delays between Liverpool Street and Edmonton, and on TfL there are severe delays between Liverpool Street and Shenfield. LBC Travel, I'm Mark Percy.
This is LBC.
Sometimes you just fancy a restyle, a new bathroom, perhaps a new kitchen. But as with all stylish things, you'll want to make sure that they're fitted to perfection. That's where Trusted Trader are always on hand to help. TrustedTrader.com have lots of really lovely tradespeople who are vetted, reviewed and reliable, so you'll find the professional you need, including an expert who'll design and install that gorgeous new kitchen or bathroom.
TrustedTrader.com. The best place for sleepyheads is in their Bridge bedding bed.
At Bridge Bedding, we have hundreds of beds and mattresses in stock from the biggest brands in the UK. We'll beat any price on a like-for-like basis and we'll deliver for free. So before you buy your next new bed, visit a Bridge Bedding Centre, Rectory Grovely-on-Sea, Upminster Road, Hornchurch, or online at bridgebedding.com.
The best place for sleepyheads is in their Bridge bedding bed.
Is your money working as hard as you do? Think about it. While you're grafting away, is your money working too? No? Then it's time to Wealthify. Wealthify is the smart, easy way to start investing. Just say how you want to invest. Cautious, adventurous, somewhere in between? And let Wealthify do the rest. Then keep track of your money on the app. Easy. Isn't it time for you to Wealthify? Download the app or visit wealthify.com. With investing, capital is at risk and you could get back less than you put in.
What do you need to get the very best start in your media career? How about state-of-the-art studios? The very latest technology? Learning from the best minds in the industry? At a school where you can study GCSEs and A-levels alongside the vocational media qualifications you need. Your future is here. The Global Academy, a forward-thinking state school for 14 to 19-year-olds interested in a media career. Visit globalacademy.com to find out more.
My perfect sandwich? Well, it goes bread, lettuce, cheese, and then the Branston. Deliciously tangy. Its sweet scent alone sends my taste buds into a frenzy. A mountain of glorious pickle smothers the bread from crust to crust, ready to embrace its culinary soulmate, the creamy cheddar. Then cut it in half and you're done.
Try new Branston Smooth in a jar. All the great Branston taste without the chunks. Bring out the Branston.
This is LBC, the Nigel Farage Show. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
Breaking news. Dame Margaret Hodge has responded to the fact that the party have dropped the investigation into her over allegedly shouting at Jeremy Corbyn in the continuing anti-Semitism row. And her response on Twitter is, "I'm pleased that the Labour Party has finally dropped their action against me. After 55 years of Labour Party membership, going after me instead of addressing the issue was wrong. In 2018, anti-Semitism has again reared its ugly head, and the campaign against it goes on." Doesn't sound to me like peace is breaking out in the Labour Party. Sounds to me like the anti-Semitism row is going to go on, and they're going to continue to tear chunks out of each other. It's very interesting, and Professor Goodwin was saying earlier, you know, as a political analyst, that actually they've had some big open goals with the Tory party over the course of the last few weeks, and yet they're consumed with this row. Well, they've got that problem, but Boris Johnson is today being accused of Islamophobia. He wrote a piece today in the Daily Telegraph where he said that he had concerns over people wearing the burqa, but he felt that Denmark had gone too far in banning the wearing of it in public places. But in the article he said that Muslim women wearing burqas look like letterboxes or bank robbers. Well, Boris is well known for colourful language, but now there are many screaming that the Tory party is institutionally Islamophobic, as there are others claiming that Corbyn's Labour is anti-Semitic. You see, they're all busy having this huge row amongst themselves and with the media. They're not addressing what people out in the country really want, which are better lives for themselves and for their kids. I think the populist revolt goes on. That's my view. What does Veronica, who's calling from Moray and is a new caller to the show, what does she think? Good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. Thank you. I look on Brexit, Trump, etc., as the Western equivalent of the Arab Spring. And thank goodness we have democracy here, if we leave the EU, of course. You know, Brexit was not about migration, more about desperation. You know, the differential between rich and poor is obscene. Homelessness, low wages. People don't have any hope of getting any better. No wonder youngsters are depressed. The referendum gave us hope.
OK, but one slight problem, Veronica. The Arab Spring has not exactly ended up as a great democratic success, has it?
No, but when it started with desperation. And I think people here are desperate.
So what, Veronica, I mean, we saw, didn't we? We saw, very interesting, with Chequers, we saw kind of an aftershock of the Brexit earthquake. You know, thousands of letters going into the Daily Telegraph, really angry people calling this show and other shows on LBC. It was a little sort of mini populist revolt over Chequers. What do you think? If people are as desperate as you say they are, Veronica, if Brexit just does not get cleanly delivered, what then?
I don't know. I'm old, you know. I could, but if I was young, I would be angry.
Well, being old doesn't mean you can't be angry, Veronica. You don't sound that old, by the way.
I mean, I would be angry enough to want to do something.
Yeah.
I don't blame the young, whatever happens. You know, I think... I grew up in central London after the war, playing on bomb sites. There was poverty. There wasn't homelessness, as you've got today. It was illegal.
So people are desperate. No, Veronica, listen, thank you. I'm going to move on. I want to get lots of opinions on this. Veronica says it was all about desperation. If she's right, then populism certainly won't go away. Connor is a new caller from Brighton. Good evening, Connor.
Good evening, Nigel.
So, does populism continue, or does it fade away and we go back to normal?
I think that really depends on how the course of Brexit goes. I mean, with the rise of Trump, I think that was definitely a big boost. I think if good comes from Brexit, which I hope it does, I think that course could continue.
What if Brexit fails, Connor, and we finish up with Chequers, or probably worse, knowing this Prime Minister, we finish up sort of half in, half out, perhaps in an even worse place than we were before? Does that make people angry enough to want to go and do it all over again? Or does it make them say, all right, let's just give it back to the Cleggs and the Blairs and let them get on with it?
Well, I think if it all doesn't go to plan and things start going downhill, I think that's going to perhaps change the mindset back to the way it used to be.
Okay, so your contention is the populist revolt in this country depends on the success of Brexit. It's a very powerful point. Thank you. Nicholas is a new caller from Rotherham. Good evening, Nicholas.
Good evening, Nigel. Big fan.
Well, very nice to speak to you. Thank you. Is it here to stay, or could it, as our last caller, Connor, said, could it just fade away?
It's only going to grow.
Why?
We've seen the problems with Italy and the ship that goes to Libya and apparently picks people out of the sea, which it's picking up from Libya and delivers them to Italy. That's been stopped because of populism. So they decided to hit southern Spain instead. It's a matter of time till it starts pumping out in Spain as well. And I mean, the EU is going the wrong way about trying to keep us in the EU. I don't understand what the thinking is behind everything.
Well, they think, Nicholas, they can bully us, and we'll just give in.
I mean, I called in to discuss what they're doing with the value of the pound. I mean, ever since the Brexit vote, they've punished us. It's down 15, 20%. I have a non-EU family. I have to support them. It's big punishment on me.
Well, the pound, Nicholas, the pound is interesting, all right? So the pound, a couple of months back, we got back, that's 7 weeks ago, we got back to 143.50 against the dollar. We were back to the same level it was trading at on referendum day. It is now falling. It broke 130 against the dollar today, but it's going down now because of a government that appears to be completely out of control, and also a fear that if this government collapses, what if Corbyn got in? So, you know. But, Nicholas, will the populist revolt continue in America and Europe too, in your opinion?
Oh, 100%.
100%. Nicholas couldn't be clearer, and he clearly sees immigration as being the great issue. Rory, another new caller, is calling from Tooting. Good evening.
Hello, Nigel. Sir Nigel.
Hello. So is it a flash in the pan, Rory, or is it here to stay?
Flash it.
Right. Go on.
Right. I came over here in the early 70s from Portugal with the visa, everything. I was brought up and everything. I believe in a lot of things in my life. I've got 3 children that are the age of 21 plus, and I've worked as a bin man most of my life. I've emptied everything. I've done everything. I've washed toilets, I picked cabbages, I picked strawberries, and my sons are trying to get a job, and the guy, they said, well, we can't give you a job, but somebody else can get a job. But why can't we, the British, get a job, and yet why can't we come out and shut the door, sir?
So, Rory, would you... And you've been somebody who's come here. You came from totalitarianism. You came to live in our democratic country. Do you now think that the Brexit vote and taking control of our borders was the sensible thing to do?
Yes, 100%. Get the fish back. Get everything
You're
back.
more Eurosceptic than I am, Rory.
And get Her Majesty to give you an OBE. Get rid of Theresa May. I'm being honest.
No, I know you are. I can tell. I'm loving it.
I'm being honest. I've voted Labour all my life, like my dad and everything. As soon as that criminal got away with the justice, I won't mention his name, but TB got away with it.
Yeah. Well.
The other one,
that's a little bit strong, Rory. I mean, he might have told us a porky pie or two, but it's a bit strong. Rory, listen, thank you. Some passion there from Tooting. Came from Portugal, picked strawberries, cleaned toilets, was a bin man, naturalised British, and he's tougher. He's a bigger populist than I am, I can tell you that. Christina is a new caller from Detling down in Kent. Christina, populism, Brexit, Trump, Salvini, is it here to stay?
It's absolutely here to stay. It's going absolutely nowhere, and if anything, it's getting bigger.
It's getting bigger?
Yep.
So, I mean, are we across the Western world now just so distrustful of our governments? I mean, is that what it's all about, or what is it?
Social media, we can actually voice our distrust now, and we can see more that's going on, whereas before we were fed a lot of nonsense.
Well, Christina, I'm with you. I think social media is a major explanation for much of what has happened. But what happens, Christina, if, Facebook and Twitter and YouTube, what happens if those pushing populist messages get banned from using those platforms? It is beginning to happen.
Well, they'll never be banned entirely because Facebook can't very well do that, and neither can the others because they can't be seen to do that. Now, there are ways around it, and we've all sort of found them. But with you can hit the bell on YouTube to be notified directly, and the same for Instagram. I've actually come off Facebook myself after the Zuckerberg trial thing. It just disgusted me to no end, so I just deleted Facebook.
Okay.
So they can't. They literally cannot. We're the strongest we've ever been, and it's like a revolution of thought.
It's a revolution of thought. Christina, thank you. And I'm getting a lot of populists calling. Please someone tell me that Professor Goodwin is wrong, that I'm wrong. Please someone tell me that normal service is going to be resumed, that we're going to get back people like Clegg and Blair and Hillary Clinton, and they're going to run the world. Please tell me we've got this horribly wrong. 0345 6060 973. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show exclusively on LBC. It is now 7:46.
Coming up at 8 on LBC, Clive Bull.
It's not a border force, but a border farce, says the boss of British Airways. So after years of cuts, how controlled will our borders be after Brexit?
Clive Bull on LBC.
Good old Rosie, she's my Rosie. I love Rosie. A simple summer cloudy on a summer's day. And making cider a traditional way. The sparkle in the apples and the rolling hay. Rosie brings a taste of true sunshine. Old Rosie.
Old Rosie, the original cloudy cider from Herefordshire. Now that's something to sing about.
We got it at Selco. Selco, it's where the trade goes.
At Selco Builders Warehouse, we've got real deals on a wide range of trade-quality building products. In August, we've got an 18-volt Bosch Combi drill with 2 batteries and a bag for just £79.99 ex-VAT. Now that's a real deal. We've got even more real deals at Selco Builders Warehouse. For more information, see selcobw.com.
We've got it at Selco. Selco, it's where the trade goes.
Now's the perfect time to sort your broadband. If you get BT Super Fast Fibre Unlimited, you'll save over £320, including BT Sport free for 18 months. I mean, come on, just in time for the new season. It's $29.99 a month on an 18-month contract with $9.99 delivery. But hurry, offer ends on the 16th of August. Search BT Broadband to join today. Be there. BT.
Prices may change. Save £324 with BT Sport on Sky. Price from month 19, £71.24. Terms apply.
You probably think you're pretty good at multitasking behind the wheel. I mean, you have to multitask to drive. So what's wrong with checking your phone? The thing is, your brain simply doesn't work. Even a quick look at the message, or firing off a quick reply, affects your concentration and makes you less able to react to hazards. If you use a mobile phone while driving, you're 4 times more likely to crash. Think. Put your phone away.
Last year in England, more than 250,000 workplaces took on an apprentice. I'm here with Victoria Walton from Great Annual Savings Group to find out how apprenticeships have benefited their business.
Apprenticeships have provided us with an invaluable way to equip our workforce for the future. They bring sparkle, they bring ambition, they bring enthusiasm, which is great for us as a company. If I was ever asked, would I recommend an organisation take on an apprentice? Absolutely, yes.
To find out how apprenticeships can work for your business, phone 08000 150 600 for free advice or search Hire an Apprentice.
Leading Britain's conversation. LBC, The Nigel Farage Show.
The populist revolt began with the Brexit vote and it spread to America and across the whole of the rest of Europe too. Is it just a flash in the pan? Or is it actually here to stay? Are the factors behind it going to continue? And I say this in the light of the fact that we had Professor Matthew Goodwin in earlier, the author of a book, National Populism, The Revolt Against Liberal Democracy. Pamela on Facebook says, staying in the EU is the best thing for this country in the long run. Populism won't last. Jan on Facebook says, nothing will change until politicians start listening to the people and stop trying to dictate what we should be thinking. Jan, that's why populism is happening. It is happening because they're simply not listening to us. Populism has come about, as you say, via social media, showing the alternatives. There is a massive vacuum in politics now and a great opportunity for a breakaway party, says Paolo from Cheam. And Singh says, this is a wake-up call to the political class. They need to listen to the majority. And in a sense, Singh, you're right. You know, populist political movements and parties can be destroyed. They can be blown away if the establishment mainstream are prepared to say, all right, hands up, we've got this wrong, we hear you, we're adopting your platforms, we'll even take 1 or 2 of your people and make them part of our team. That is the way that populism ends, in a sense, is when it becomes the established, settled mainstream. Let's go to Brian, a new caller to this show, who lives in Washington, Tyne and Wear. Hello.
Hi, Nigel. Listen, I didn't vote during the referendum because I was confused about who to go for.
Right.
Okay, so I went to Glastonbury instead and enjoyed myself.
Oh, you were at Glastonbury, right? So, were you one of those people, singing along? Oh, Jeremy Corbyn.
Not really. I'm not a massive Jeremy Corbyn fan, even though I am a socialist at heart. I'm not keen on Jeremy Corbyn.
But surely, if you're a socialist at heart, Brian, after years of Blair and Brown and all the others, I mean, Corbyn should delight you, because Corbyn himself is quite populist, isn't he? I mean, what he says about big businesses and
Jeremy Corbyn is not really a socialist. He's quite a wealthy man. You know, he's what some people would consider a champagne socialist. He's not sure of a bob or two. I mean, but the fact is.
So are you saying, Brian, that people with money, like Tony Benn, can't be socialists because they've got money?
Well, no. There's a lot of politicians out there who wear the socialist ski mask and pretend to be socialist when they're quite wealthy and that, you know.
All right.
But I would love to see a government that nationalises everything.
Oh,
because
no.
I'll tell you what it is, what's worried me, those people who vote, the working class people who voted for Brexit, right, have made a massive mistake, because obviously when we leave the European Union, all the prices in the shops are going to go up and up and up. Those people...
No. Brian, when we leave the European Union, we could make the prices in the shops go down and down and down by making bras that are made in Vietnam cheaper, green beans that are grown in Kenya cheaper. I mean, food could be cheaper for ordinary people.
Yeah, but the truth is, Nigel, all those people who voted for Brexit, all the politicians said we're going to have all these special deals coming. I can't see any of it coming at the moment. So, I mean, there's nothing happening. And I think the working class has made a massive mistake, honestly.
Don't you think, Brian, that many of the working classes are patriotic, are proud of their country, and didn't like us being dictated to by a group of unelected bureaucrats based in Brussels? I'm putting the populist message to you.
Working classes were voting on the ground of immigration purely. That's what I've heard. I mean, a lot of the working class people voted because of immigrants coming in the country, and that's the only reason why they voted to come out of Europe.
And is that wrong?
Nothing to do with anything else.
And is that wrong?
No, that's their view. But the fact is, when all the cuts are going to come into place, they're going to suffer. We're going to see a lot of people using more food banks. There's going to be people destitute on the streets. Jobs are going to be lost. There's loads of jobs in the retail sector getting lost now. It's terrifying.
So what should we do, Brian?
Down at the Titanic.
What should we do? If you think this populist vote was a mistake and it's going to be a disaster, what should we do? Just put our trust in the Labour Party?
No, just pray and hope that things get better.
Well, I think we all need to pray more regularly than we do, Brian, for lots of reasons. Thank you very much indeed for your call, Brian, there, putting a pretty depressing tone on the whole thing. Brexit sent populism into high gear. The people know they can defy the elites, and now we have President Trump, etc., says Chris on Twitter. Philip says the establishment are disconnected from the electorate. They still think of the electorate as sheep. We are now better informed. The establishment still think they can pull the wool over our eyes. The elites don't want to listen, Philip. They still don't want to listen. And I'm stunned, when I see Michael Gove and Boris Johnson saying, oh, well, it's all a bit sad we had to talk about immigration, really. We don't want to reduce the numbers coming into this country, when actually huge numbers who voted Brexit want to see not just proper controls, but actually fewer people by number coming into this country. They want to get it back to some sort of historical post-war norm. Let's go to Neil in Mill Hill, a new caller to this show. Neil, good evening.
Hi, Nigel. It's a pleasure talking to you.
Pleasure to talk to you.
Of yours.
Thank you. So, are you one of these horrible populists, Neil?
Well, I'm in fear. I voted Brexit for all the right reasons, and I'm in fear that if we don't get Brexit, it's going to be a crucial turning point where people will be despondent and think that there's no way that we can actually get a voice to do, for a certain percentage of the people. Because what you've got the Remainers have got this big voice with all these senior people, senior MPs, all fighting against us. We've got an uphill battle like a salmon upstream, up a waterfall. We really need to push forward. I don't want to riot, but my thoughts are if 17 million people took to the streets and they had a sensible march towards London, I think the voice would be heard, to be honest. That's what I feel.
But it wouldn't happen, Neil, would it?
No, it wouldn't. And the trouble is, sensible people, well, I'm not saying Remainers aren't sensible, but, most people would think, well, hold on a minute, let's make this happen. Let's actually, we voted for it. Let's make it happen. In fact, I think a no deal is a good deal, because at the end of the day, the dust will settle when they realise the four horses of the apocalypse aren't riding, and it's all going to work out fine, and we'll stand on our own 2 feet once and fall like we did in the beginning.
And do you think, Neil, are sort of the desire of people like you to control their own, control their borders, make their own laws, get their fish back and all the rest of it, do you think that mood is going to continue to spread across the rest of Europe?
I think so. I think it will, because people are seeing a change. I mean, we're seeing what the Eurocrats are doing to people like us. They're really pulling us through the mill, and we've had enough of it. People, they shot themselves in the foot, because people can see them for what they really are. They really are making it painful. And people are going to say, hold on a minute, I don't really want to be dictated to like this. I don't want to not be able to vote for anybody that I want to be in the European Parliament. I don't want all these fat cats, creaming all the money that's going in.
So the revolution goes on, Neil, yeah?
I think it will do. And I think the thing is, people will be silently there, but eventually the bubble will burst, because people can't hold back those feelings. If they're not getting what they want, they're not being represented properly, they will speak up, and they will take to the streets,
Neil. Neil, thank you. Well, we won't get 17.4 million marching, but who knows how many we might get. Let's go to Michael in Brentwood, another new caller to this show. Michael, good evening.
Good evening to you.
So, does populism, does this revolution continue to roll out, or does it peter out?
I think it's going to peter out.
Okay.
I think that eventually the major parties will get their act together and start listening to what the people are saying. And I think what you said earlier about them taking some small parts of the populist party, just as the Conservatives have done, and the UKIP vote has collapsed, just that sort of thing will happen.
But Michael, if the Conservatives adopt a lot of the UKIP mantra and put it in their manifesto and then don't deliver it, they'll lose the votes again, won't they?
Absolutely, but I don't think they'll adopt it wholesale anyway. They'll do an adaptation of it. But I think that people are angry right now because we've had a lot of years with very ineffective government, But when government gets its act together, when we have enough hospitals, when we have enough houses being built, when people are happier and more content, the populist vote will dwindle.
Yeah, but then you could argue, Michael, if those circumstances happen, then the populist revolt will have been a massive success, won't it?
It's there for a reason, Nigel. I'm not saying that I disagree with the populist revolt. I'm saying that for too many years, the governments haven't listened to what people did want, and so it becomes their want and their need becomes more extreme. If you listen to them in the first part and meet them halfway.
OK, I get what you're saying, Michael, that actually the populist revolt shifts the centre of gravity of Western politics. There's no more need for populism because people basically get most of what they want. We will see. I'll be back tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. At 10 o'clock tonight, it's going to be Nick Abbott in for Ian Collins, but up next, it's Clive Bull.
Nigel, thank you. Coming up at 9, it's the Consumer